Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Scott Logic webinar. My name's Claire Cox. I work on the business development team here at Scott Logic. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a technology company that specialises in delivering bespoke software solutions. If you managed to catch our last webinar on mapping the Cloud Atlas, you'll have heard James Dunkley talk briefly about the importance of DevOps in your cloud journey. So I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleague Bartosz, technical principal at Scott Logic, who's going to talk about how to foster a DevOps culture. If you want to catch up on any of the webinars that you've missed, you can find them on YouTube on the Scott Logic channel. If you'd like a copy of the slides, you can download these in the handout section. And if you have any questions, please pop them in the question box and we'll take as many as we can at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to your presenter, Bartosz.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, hello. So I'll be talking today to you about fostering a DevOps culture. First of all, to introduce myself, as Claire said, thank you for that. I'm a technical principal for Scott Logic. I've been a technical lead in the Home Office project. I wrote the Journey to DevOps white paper, where I talk about adopting DevOps in a public sector organization, although I think advice there it's often applicable to private sector as well. And I've written over 100 articles on scottlogic.com and e4developer.com on DevOps, microservices, Agile, and kind of similar topics. So I've exposed my views to wider critique. So before kind of going and talking about fostering DevOps culture, it's worth to talk a little bit about what DevOps is. I think there are multiple views, multiple opinions out there, what isn't DevOps. So let me tell you kind of my view and maybe the official view as well. So first of all, DevOps is not a job title. It's very common nowadays that people recruit for DevOps engineers, people have DevOps in their title, and it's not really bad or wrong, but I think it kind of confuses the message a little bit. It's like saying, my organization is Agile because I hired an Agile PM, because I put Agile PM advert on LinkedIn and I hired someone in that job title. So DevOps is not that. It's not really bad because probably it shows that there is willingness from a company to go that direction if they advertise for these roles. But you know, it's not that simple that we can all just hire a team of DevOps engineers and that we're done with our work. DevOps is not also a set of tools. Again, you know, tools are useful, but it's way too often you ask people, are you doing DevOps? Are you interested in that? And they say, yes, we have Jenkins, so we're doing DevOps because, you know, Jenkins or GitHub or GitLab, that's all you need to really do DevOps. Well, again, you know, these are things that help, but that's not really what DevOps is all about. And even I can go as far to say that DevOps is not a continuous integration and delivery. These are practices that are common in DevOps, but are not really required, or they're not the only thing that makes DevOps. I actually worked and spoke to people who work in environments where you cannot use continuous integration because let's say you have a physical product out there, or you know, because of different security reasons or other limitation, asking me if they can still do DevOps with these limitations. And then the message there is, yes, absolutely, you can still do DevOps. DevOps is far more than just that. These are just certain things that are useful or important to succeed, but not necessary. DevOps is a set of practices that create DevOps culture. And again, you know, here I'm just changing the game from defining DevOps to defining DevOps culture, but don't worry, we'll get there. And on another hand, who I am to tell you what DevOps is if different people have very different opinions. So this is not really just my view. This is the view presented by Gene Kim, Jess Humble, Patrick Debois, and John Willis in the DevOps handbook. So very brief kind of history lesson here on the DevOps. basically the first time people started talking about DevOps was around 2009 when Patrick Debois organized the first DevOps Days conference, where himself and like-minded individuals kind of trying to merge development and operations together created that conference where they exchanged ideas related to that movement. And I think really kind of game-changing point was in 2016 where the DevOps handbook was published. It's I think it's still probably the best book to really get the overview of the entire kind of DevOps landscape, what's meant by it. I find it quite difficult to read cover to cover, but the audiobook is quite good if you just want to listen to it cover to cover, and then you can use the physical book itself as a reference if you want to kind of refresh yourself on certain specific ideas. And last year in 2019, I've seen DevOps practices being widely used across private and public sector. Kind of everywhere I would turn up, people were either talking about DevOps, doing DevOps, or just trying to learn more about it. And hence, webinar like that, I think is very useful to give. So, okay, DevOps culture. The DevOps handbook talks about it extensively, and it rests on 3 pillars. So these are the flow, feedback, and continual experimentation and learning. So the whole DevOps mindset really is about improving the speed at which you deliver. That's flow. Making sure you get fast and precise feedback. Well, that's feedback. So for example, every time you work on a feature or your development team works on a feature, that feature gets produced quickly, moves with the flow. But every time something is broken, either that be on a low level, the unit test will show it, or if some interactions with different components are broken, then the integration test will show it, or it's not ultimately what the client wants, then that client feedback is as early as possible. So that's receiving very quick feedback and never going with the wrong thing for too long. And then while doing all that fast flow and good feedback, we also need to ensure that we continually experiment and learn, so that the world moves on, especially the development world moves so quickly that if you just set up even a good flow and good feedback in your system, if you don't do anything for the next few years, you may end up with a legacy code base that is hard to maintain. You may find that your flow suddenly becomes very slow and your feedback is not precise and not very good at all. And I think this is a good point for a quick poll to see where kind of your organization faces most challenges. Is it in a flow section? Is it with the feedback, or in the continual experimentation and learning? So I'll give it to Claire now, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just put that on the screen now, Bartosz. So we're asking, where do you think your organization has the biggest challenges with DevOps? And you can select either flow, feedback, or continual experimentation and learning. We're only going to give you about 10 seconds to get your votes in now, and then Bartosz can talk a bit more about that. I can see some of you are voting already, so I'll just give you a few more seconds, and then I'm going to close this poll and I will share the results with you. Right, I'm closing that now. So let's share the results. So 18% of you have said that your biggest challenge with DevOps is with flow, 27% with feedback, but the majority, 55% of you are struggling with continual experimentation and learning. So let me just hide these results now and I'll pass you back to Bartosz.
Thank you very much, Claire. That's really interesting result, and I think it reflects the kind of amount of writing you have on different subjects. Kind of flow and feedback being quite well explored and understood by both agile development and the whole TDD, test-driven development and domain-driven development ideas. But this continual experimentation and learning, while I think one of the most important areas, is something that does not receive enough kind of writing or discussion. So I'll make sure in my webinar to focus on that section a bit more when we get to there. And have quite a few interesting things to say on that. So, okay, we're talking about this webinar is about fostering DevOps culture, and how do you foster it? Well, with actions, and I will bring here the words of, well, actually common saying, but Abraham Lincoln is apparently the first one who has said that on record. Action speaks louder than words. So let's look at specific actions that you and your organization, your project team can be doing to improve, to adopt that DevOps culture in these specific areas. Let's start with the flow. This is, as I said, that's kind of keeping up the good pace of development, making sure that things are created quickly and delivered quickly to production environment. So the first thing that I would advise people to do with flow is just focus on the actual stories and tasks you're delivering. For better or for worse, I think for the better, we live in the agile development world where you have tasks, tickets, Jira stories, and what I often find is that they're quite poorly defined. You may have them defined on a varying level of depth. You may, they're kind of it feels sometimes like homework for product owners because everyone is excited in talking about what to build, but not many people are excited about creating the actual tickets. And that kind of can waste time on creating the wrong thing, waste time on people asking for clarification where there is no need for it, and it can be vastly improved often. I would say, if that's the case for you, find the source of the issue and fix it there. It could be you if you're the product owner. It could be you if you're a kind of technical product owner writing stories for your team. I found there is a great book, User Stories Applied, on the topic that I found very helpful in educating business analysts, for example, how to engage with development with quality stories and tasks. So that's one way you can think of improving flow, is putting your focus there. Another way, and probably that's where a lot of people think that the whole DevOps is about that, is automating your deployments. There is a reason why this is so popular and why people speak so much about that, is because it gives massive gains. Basically, manual steps are the key impediment to good flow. Modern CI/CD pipelines consist of multiple steps, and there should all be automated as much as possible. Again, that does not necessarily mean automate everything, automate deployment to production environment. If you're in a position to do so, that's great. But I've worked in environments where the deployment to production still needed a manual actions, but all the deployment to development, QA environments, they were all automated. And this is the investment that definitely pays off. And if flow, if you're in this, I think 18% maybe, that indicated flow, then I would suggest definitely, this is the area where you can improve it a lot. So no more massive manual runbooks. And more trivial and often simpler or not is to give developers the tools that they need. There isn't anything, there are not many more frustrating things for developers than machines and hardware not up to the task. So I know it's capital expenditure, but invest in quality laptops or quality machines, remote desktops, whatever your company uses. Make sure that you pay for professional IDs as required. Give your developers multiple monitor setups, access to cloud resources as much as possible, and lightweight procurement processes. It's very, it's really sad when a very good development team is slowed down by trivial things like that can be just solved by simple spending that is often not that much compared to salaries you pay to your people, and especially compared to the money it takes to replace a good developer that leaves because of trivial things like that. One thing that often can help is also lightweight procurement process. I've seen places where it was very difficult to basically procure an SSL certificate or a Windows license worth £100. That would take a month or two and kind of blocking development. And I've seen people actually take out their own credit card and pay for these things than trying to expense it, which you know, you can often do much better than that. And the last thing maybe on the flow that I see as a common thing is the pointless bureaucracy. Again, I'm not saying remove all bureaucracy. That there are processes that add tangible value often, that, you know, they're the safeguarding you need to do. But I've seen things such as sign-off process that is only a formality, that slows down things for no good reason, because the person doing the sign-off has no knowledge or interest in what they're signing off, so it just becomes a tick box exercise. I've seen security involvement that is also a tick box exercise and adds no real value. You know, rather than waste their time with tick boxes, think how they can meaningfully be involved in a feedback process. I've seen pointless forms required to deploy to development environments. Again, I don't really understand why that is, or I understand why that could have been in the past, but this has no place in a modern DevOps environment. Rather than do all that, focus on automating and logging and auditing. You know, assume people are responsible, but log and audit their actions if you need, if that's needed. And yeah, okay, maybe for your production environment you can keep your break glass process and similar, but where it's not needed, remove it. Don't slow down people when you don't have to. So that's kind of what I would say my key points on improving flow. Let's look at the feedback now before we move to the point where the most of us struggle with. So how do we improve feedback? How do we make sure that we don't go the wrong way for too long? First of all is the obvious one, and again, the largest one, probably the one that people often mistake with the whole DevOps movement, is automating your quality checking. You know, simple checks or tests can be automated via unit testing, and you don't need manual testers testing this sort of you know, trivial processes. Again, think about different levels at which you can introduce your automation and free your test specialists to kind of deliver value in areas where a simple script cannot replace them. You know, repetitive monotonous tasks are handled better by automation, so let's use that automation there. This is a huge topic and a whole field of automated testing, test strategy that exists around it. So you know, I don't want to go too deep into that, but I would say look into your automated testing and make sure you use it right. That does not mean automating 100%, and that does not mean not automating at all. It means having an honest, open discussion with testers and developers and other stakeholders and understanding what's the best strategy for you. And that can really improve the quality of your product. Another one, more kind of on a code writing side, is introducing good code review and branching strategy. You know, do code review. There are places that don't, but it's it can be made as a lightweight process using something like merge and pull requests with GitHub, GitLab, or whatever tool you use, and kind of lightweight sign-off process where more people get familiarized with the changes, more people are involved in making the change, and a tool like GitLab or GitHub can really make it easier for you. And again, quite surprisingly, I've seen an organization that used GitLab but did not realize that it allows you to create a merge request that has kind of code review capability very nicely integrated inside it. So that organization with GitLab was looking to buy or install another product separately for code reviews. So, you know, if you already use quality tools like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, make sure you know what they can do before you're off there kind of trying to just solve it with yet another product. And it can be game changing, and actually often developers enjoy it. It's kind of nicer than just not doing it. And back to kind of people now, make sure to involve your stakeholders and users as early as possible. That's really similar to Agile as well, so it shouldn't be new, but it's often very much neglected. But the importance of it is huge. You know, it's so big that the whole book, the Lean Startup, and very similar book, Lean Enterprise, largely the ideas written there are all derived from the main idea that you should be validating and showing your product, your ideas to customers as early as possible, and it can transform businesses. It can make or break a startup. It can make or break a new product. If the user is not available, you make sure you have an active and engaged product owner to provide that feedback. It's you don't want to spend tens or hundreds of thousands or even more on very skilled development team that ends up doing something that brings no value or is not what your developers or users want. So yes, I would say very important and very neglected point in a lot of organizations. And another thing that's really worth thinking about is creating a space for honest feedback. Some organizations, some larger organizations especially, are quite common. It's quite common problem that people are afraid to talk honestly about problems because they're covering themselves. So you want people to be able to have that crucial, honest conversations with each other. And one way to do it is, create things such as blameless postmortem. So, when discussing accidents, focus on trying to get to the root cause and see what kind of processes you can put in place to stop it from happening again, rather than trying to identify the one person that failed there, because that person should not have been allowed to fail. Either they should not have been allowed as much power, or there should be another process they should have followed. Of course, if someone is ignoring processes, then there is a different crucial conversation to be had with them. But don't start with that. That shouldn't be the main thing on people's minds. And always remember that everyone has a shared goal. So maybe developers and operations disagree on some basic level, but on a high level, that those groups of people probably still share company mission, values, or they just want to deliver a working project, working product, and the general professionalism that kind of bonds them. So there is often a level on which, if people disagree on the most basic level, you can often take the conversation to more higher level and see that there is an agreement there and work from there. Again, that's a large topic, and there is a very short book, Crucial Conversation, on which I found really, really good in kind of learning how to foster these kind of conversations. And it's good to even give some sort of training to people on your teams to kind of teach them how they can have this kind of difficult, honest conversations with each other. So continual experimentation and learning. This is the area where most of you said that you have problems with, or your organizations struggle with. And I'm not that surprised, because that's the most nebulous area, I would say, in this whole DevOps world. So first of all, what I find very helpful is dedicating time for sustainability. There used to be a time where everyone used to talk about technical debt and how we should give 10% to your team to work on technical debt. But I think that's kind of a bit reductionist and misleading, because then you end up having a conversation what constitutes technical debt, what does not constitute technical debt, and all that, and kind of, is it really important or not? And a lot of financial organization actually looks at that technical debt as a positive thing because of leverage and other financial metrics. So I would rather change the word to sustainability, and I would say, and that's not just my ideas, dedicate about 20% development and your kind of technical time to work on sustainability. That means technical debt, monitoring, testing, automation, documentation, tooling, doing everything you can and improving that to keep and improve the speed at which you're moving forward. I'm not really talking here about environment sustainability, although that's also important. But yeah, making sure you dedicate time to keep up and to speed up, and reserve that time. Make the team kind of own that time, rather than dictate to them what exactly they should be doing to improve that. Although you should be probably guiding them in choosing the right areas of focus, but do not dictate, guide, and help. And yes, sustainability is important for climate as well. Another idea that I find important but kind of difficult to implement is kind of shared learning in form of some sort of lectures, brown bags, or presentations. And I think here you need to find what works for your company. What works for ScottLogic was our Techie Brekkie idea, which started as an internal thing where on Thursday morning, 8 a.m., we would gather in the office. One person would present on a technical topic of their interest, and the others would listen and enjoy a free breakfast to kind of encourage people to actually come at 8 a.m. rather than the usual 9 a.m. And that worked for us because we're a consulting company and we often struggle to meet together in one space. But you know, if you're a product organization, maybe brown bags, lunch sessions would be easier for you to organize. Most of your teams are probably already sort of co-located, so maybe the lunch session is easier sell to people where you provide some sandwiches or something like that. I've seen also ad hoc presentations work quite well, where one team, for example, the DevOps team, made a breakthrough in using some new tool, and they like to share it with the wider organization to kind of teach others how to do that. But these sort of ad hoc presentations you may need to start doing yourself a bit more and push that until it becomes part of your culture. Another thing that actually is nice is attending meetups as a group. You know, if you find a meetup you're interested in, get your colleagues and invite them and go there as a group and learn together. And you know, do what works for your company. It's worth saying also that we open up the Techie Brekkie a bit, and in Bristol, Edinburgh, London, Newcastle, I think we're doing them externally a little bit as well. So if you like the breakfast idea, you can come to us as well. But there are plenty other meetups all over UK that you can be attending. So yeah, it's one way to really, I would say, inspire people as well, because there is the learning what you do right now, and then, you know, for this continual experimentation and learning, you also want to see what's the next big thing. So the team is aware, people are excited, people are aware, people want to kind of go there and learn this. It kind of re-energizes you for your job as well, so really worth doing it. Another thing to really look at with this continual experimentation and learning is experimenting with failures. So there are companies out there that are really doing that DevOps thing really well. They have a good flow, good feedback, and that could be you, given that not many of you listed this as their problems. But is your system actually, you know, strong enough? So you may start to experiment with failures in your system. See what happens if a database goes down. See what happens if some of your microservices fail. See what happens if, you know, different parts of your infrastructure are not behaving as required. It's kind of preempting the inevitable that will happen at some point. You know, if you have people that on call that, you know, you call on weekend or in the evening to try to fix your system, try to do these drills during the daytime so that different failures are easy to fix or even automated. And you don't have to go all the way Netflix style when they have a tool called Chaos Monkey that literally kills different services, databases, and whatnot to constantly keep them on their toes. You don't need to go all modern, but you can go even that far if you really want to be at the bleeding edge of organization and a system that cannot easily go down via any imaginable way. So, you know, don't think that because everything works right now means that there is nothing else you can be doing or trying to get even better. And I would say measure more. It's very big idea that a lot of companies completely miss. If you gather all the metrics, both on your processes and both on your users and your features, you suddenly you realize which changes do and don't make sense. You know, maybe you're spending all your effort on a screen in your application that only 5% of users ever see, while that most popular screen you were not even aware of is still bug-ridden and full of defects. So, you know, making measurement part of your culture is also a really good approach to that. That screenshot is Kibana there, which is particularly good tool for logging and creating different graphs. And again, the message here is do not only focus on your on your users, but also focus on your processes. Which part of your process takes the most, where you can do the most improvement on that feedback flow kind of journey to DevOps. So these are all the 12 ideas that I had for you today for fostering DevOps culture. So you have 4 for improving flow, feedback, and continual experimentation and learning. I hope you found that webinar informative, and please let me know if you have any questions now.
We actually have got a couple of questions that have come through, Bartosz. So the first one says, does DevOps make development less secure?
Well, it's quite common that people worry about the improved flow and removing bureaucracy as a means to kind of decrease the security. But I think there is both empirical and anecdotal evidence that this is not the case. DevOps organization usually have much less problems with security as they stay on the latest version of the tools and software much more than the organization that move much slower. But also, you know, when you actually work in an organization with security function, you'll find that they often are only involved at the very last stage, and they're not really fully integrated into the feedback. So the real question here is, how can you get the security feedback as early and as often as possible? So just make them part of the DevOps culture. And you know, there is even this whole DevSecOps acronym that people are talking about, which is making security part of your delivery culture.
That's great. We're slightly running over, but I just want to squeeze one last question in because I think it's going to be quite pertinent to a lot of people who have joined today. And it's, how do I convince management to give DevOps a try?
So I think there is a misconception that you need a big mandate for DevOps because, you know, people see these DevOps engineer roles and things like that. You don't really have to have a specifically DevOps engineer hired to kind of start doing DevOps. When you look at these flow, feedback, and continual experimentation and learning ideas here, most of them, they don't need massive buy-in from managers. They just need people to start doing these things. And you know, if you're a team lead, if you're a developer on a team, or if you're a project manager, you know, you don't have to start with all 12, but you can pick things that you can start doing, and then you're doing DevOps. It's the same kind of like with Agile. You don't really need a big permission to do Agile as long as you start doing things that foster this DevOps or Agile culture in that case. So start fostering DevOps culture, and you know, you can even start calling it like that. And I don't think you need massive buy-in for most of it from senior management, which is a great thing in my opinion.
That's great, Bartosz. That's all we've got time for today. So I just want to finish by thanking everybody for joining us today. You will receive an email with a link to watch the recording of this. Our contact details are in that email that you'll get. So please do feel free to get in touch and we can keep the conversation going. If you have any further questions as well, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to us through our website. Or through the contact details in the email, and we'd be happy to answer those questions. And I just want to say thank you to Bartosz for today.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.